Hello, I'm here with Lynn Henkell. She is our Technical Services Librarian at Cranberry Public Library. She's test subject number 3, and we are asking staff for answers, or I guess they're stories, not answers. They're stories for National Library Week. Hi, Lynn.
Hello, Leslie. How are you today?
2 thumbs up.
2 thumbs up, okay.
Okay, we're going to go way back before you were an actual librarian and ask, what is your earliest memory of using a library, any library?
It was using the Carnegie Library in the South Hills. There was one in Brentwood, and there was one on South Side. And I remember getting on the bus and riding down Bronzeville Road, and you had to be very quiet, and it was kind of dark and creepy, but they had a whole lot of books. And I guess I was about maybe 9 or 10, and I was allowed to go there by myself, so that was a big trip. And the one down at Southside, I had to wait until I was 12, because that was like 5 or 6 miles down the road. So, and I had to, but that had 2 floors in it.
Yes, it did.
And that was, yes, and that was pretty special. But yes, I do remember that. Yeah, and it's funny that the one from Brentwood, I remember the librarian asked, now I don't know if this is true, I'd love to go back and see if my memory is actual, but all I remember is she wore dark clothes. She sat in the desk in the middle when you first came in. That's the first thing you saw was her desk. And I don't remember her ever smiling or ever talking above a whisper. Or, I'm not sure I was really afraid of her, but I just didn't want to have any dealings with her.
So, compared to when you got to go to the South Side,
that was much more fun.
That was a more fun experience. And I was going to say, after that, you still wanted to become a librarian.
Well, I got to work at our high school library. I was their helper there, so. So I was their helper there, and that's whenever I found out that I really liked dealing with the books and organizing them, and actually that's what the Technical Services Librarian started out with, is organizing all the materials in the library, because, you know.
Was that class when you were in school, in library school, called organizational information or organizing information?
Organizing.
Yes. I think now they just call it cataloging.
They just call it cataloging. No, it's organizing it so people can find it when they walk down the road.
That's what I took too. Do you happen to remember when you were little a favorite book or story that might have been read to you, or that you first read by yourself?
No, I don't remember. I always enjoyed reading, and I enjoyed always reading the stories about the heroine, the girl that saved her family, and I could never figure out why I couldn't do those kind of things that they did in the books. But I do remember getting yelled at one time whenever I was reading, because we were taking a trip. It was on vacation, and we were taking a trip, and we were going camping, I think it was. And we were going, so I don't know if it was Cook Forest or up in New York or whatever it was, but it was very lovely scenery and everything like that, and I was had my nose in a book the whole time. I was saying, why are you reading? Why aren't you enjoying what's going on like this? But I guess I started out more on the classics. Ivanhoe was my favorite for a very long time, and I never really cared that much for Kidnapped. That scared me, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, I was more the classics, and naturally Nancy Drew.
Oh, I think everybody's read Nancy Drew. I don't think any librarian alive is not.
Love Nancy Drew.
Or the Hardy Boys, I guess.
Yes.
If you're a man.
Well, I read some of those too.
So how did you end up working in a library or becoming a librarian?
Well, I got married when I was 20, and my first daughter was born when I was 21. And we moved like 10 times the first 10 years we were married. So it took me a while to get my bachelor's. It took 20 years for me to actually work on getting my bachelor's, because it was just part-time here and there, and I always had to keep reapplying at different colleges and universities. So after I got that, I always knew I wanted to be a librarian because I just enjoyed working in the library so much whenever I had that experience.
From high school.
From high school.
It just lasted. Do you remember the high school librarian?
Oh, yes, I do. Sister Florian.
Ah.
And she was about 6 feet, 6 inches tall,
Wow.
but very nice. And just, it gave...
But she
I
also
guess
dressed all in black, I guess.
all black. She had the beads, but she made everybody behave. And I get, sometimes high school was a little rough on kids, and that was always my special place. I belonged there, and I said I enjoyed what I was doing. So I was one of the very few lucky ones that knew what I wanted to do. And it just took me a while. And after I got my bachelor's, I was able to work as a paraprofessional, and then I was fortunate enough to receive a grant to go on for my master's.
Very nice.
So that was, because that is expensive, and I'm not too sure it's really worth it sometimes.
We're going to edit that part out. No, I'm kidding.
Yes.
So how did you come to work at Cranberry Library specifically?
Specifically, I live in Butler, so whenever I did graduate, I thought I wanted to be a school librarian. And I was working as a substitute librarian, and it was really interesting. Worked at South Butler School District and North Allegheny School District for a while, and to see the different schools and how they handle their libraries. Some of them do value their libraries, others don't.
Right.
And you can tell it. But I needed more than just that, so I sent out applications to the public libraries in the area, and there was an opening here. And because I had worked up at Slippery Rock University when I was going there, in their library department, I worked with government documents and their archival section, doing cataloging up there.
Lynn's laughing. I'm making faces about government documents. Never been a strong suit or a favorite thing of mine.
But there's so much information there. And the archival part was really interesting to see what it was to go back to school in the 40s and the 50s, to go to colleges. It was. It was very interesting. But anyway, I had some experience with that, so that there was a position here, and I started part-time, worked part-time for maybe 5 or 6 years, and full-time opened up. And
Very good. Now, you mentioned that when you were a child you liked to read the classics. Do you still like to read the classics?
yes, periodically I will go through reading, I'm afraid of 19th century classics. Or
Okay.
the 20th century classics, I'm afraid.
So you're back in the Victorian 1800s.
Sure. Charles Dickens, I've gone through most of his, but yeah, still I enjoy that.
I think this is my favorite question of the bunch. What is your favorite memory of working at Cranberry Library or being at Cranberry Library?
Ooh, on the spot too. That's wonderful.
Because there are so many, I'm sure, because you've been here
20 years.
20 years.
20 years, so there are a lot. It always makes my day, makes me smile, and I'll think about them often. Anytime a patron says thank you, I get a lift. I'm glad I'm doing what I'm doing, because for everybody, yeah, there's those days on the job when you're not sure why you're here or what you're doing.
Right.
But anytime anybody says thank you, and that happens very often, it will happen more times than not. A specific incidents, I still remember the patron that came in for use on the computers, and she wanted to learn how to use the Excel spreadsheet program. And we sat her down at the computer, we showed her some of the basics, we had Excel loaded, we showed her some of the books. She was here constantly for about a month. She would come in 4 or 5 times a week, sit there for an hour with her little thing, and then she came back. We didn't see her for a couple weeks. She came back and again thanked us because she was able to get a better job, and that's what she was doing. She needed to know how to do Excel. She didn't have the money to go to CCAC or BC3 or whatever it is. She decided she'd do it on her own, and she was able to do it here.
That's nice. So very fulfilling. A true
Yes.
example of why a librarian or why a person would want to become a librarian.
Exactly.
Right.
It's one of my best memories.
Very good.
Yes.
I'm sure you've seen a lot of changes in your 20 years. What was the library like when you first started working here?
We, the only,
Was it even in this building?
we had just moved here, and
Okay.
I'm trying to think. The computers there were a couple computers here, but they were mainly for the staff to use, and there were standalones. There was no networking at that time. We typed out catalog cards and filed them at the time. We had stamps. Everybody had their library card with a metal number on it that you put in the machine, as well as the card from the book.
A patron brought one of those in last week.
Did they?
And I had never seen it, but I took her over to the desk and showed Ginny, do you remember this? And of course Ginny then explained to me how that all used to work, and I didn't know that is a phase of libraries that went right past me.
Did it? And what you would have to do is each day you would put the due date on that card, would stamp the due date, so you would have it filed by due date.
Right.
And as the books came in, you would have to go and pull a card. And after weekend, we were closed on Sundays at that time, but on Monday mornings everything would be jammed, and we would have books piled on the floor waiting to be shelved, and they would not be shelved until Wednesday or Thursday. By the time we got around to pulling all the cards and putting them in the back of the book and putting the books back on the shelf.
So computers have
Oh, yes.
saved us some time, even though sometimes they don't do what we want them to.
That's for sure, but yes, things have changed, as well as just being able to look at the pack and seeing what we have, and if it's available, supposedly, or not.
Right.
But it's been, and we converted over in 95 or 96, I think, when we first got our system. But that meant that whenever the Y2K scare came along, we were working through that, and actually the system we did have was one of the few that failed
Oh.
the Y2K changeover. So we had to get a new system at that time, and that's the system we have now.
Huh.
Yeah, that was interesting, those few months whenever the computer really didn't work.
So they did. The computers did actually go down.
Well, it looked like they were working, but the information was not accurate.
Oh, so it was all a facade.
Yeah, for about 4 or 5 months we scrambled.
That would be frustrating.
On computers, you either live by the sword or die by the sword, and you're right, they can be great when they work. But so, anyway.
Well, thank you, Lynn. Is there anything else you'd like to share about libraries or your experience in libraries?
I am looking forward to the next 10 or 20 years to see what develops. I think there is going to be change, just like there has been the last 20 years. But we weathered that change, and I'm sure we'll weather the next change, and it'll be interesting, and I think we'll still be here serving people.
Very good. Thanks, Lynn.
Okay.